Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 62 of The Captain's Heart. The structure Jeremy looked at through the window impressed him. Through the window impressed him. Looked at through the window impressed him on the level of how practical it looked. But do all Kelsirian stations look like this? Look like that? Praetiros snorted. This is a Federation one. Ours are much better. Aren't we inside your territory? Yes, Turk said. But at the borders like this, the Federation established and runs them. Most are Eosef's design, extremely practical without a sense of aesthetic. The Kersosteran have a few, but they are mostly administrative station. They are more pleasing to look at than this. This isn't bad, Jeremy protested, just kind of plain. The spinning ring implied spin gravity, although it might no longer use that. His engineering history class had a long chapter on centrifugal forces as the source of gravity before the invention of gravity projectors. Many of the stations built during that era still spun, since it was simpler to maintain that than retrofit the entire gravity system. Part of what made it plain to his eyes was the lack of colors. Everything was a brown that could be the material used or coating to protect against micro impact, or just because Rheosefs liked the color. He hadn't studied any of the Federation species. Feels like there's an extra space here. No. Any of the Federation species, even if he hadn't had much to do since losing his job. This is your captain. Gralgiran's voice came over the room's intercom. We are about to dock with Satura Station. We will stay for 8 days. Civilians, along with the crew that aren't on duty, have freedom to come and go as they please. Please remember to scan your bracelet on exit and entry. For those who don't know Federalese, please ensure you remain with people who do. While the Federation does its best to accommodate all species, the shops and attractions are manned by people, and they might not have learned our language. Have a good time, everyone. None of you are going to get in trouble over this, right? I'm still on 4th shift, Turek said, so I have a full one before I'm expected in engineering. You'd already approved my days of rest. Praetiros said. You are lucky. Another of the technicians said. The engineer glowered the entire time he read over my reasons for having the day. And we do not get in trouble. A woman said snidely, one of Turek's friend. If trouble shows up, we will bring an end to it. Others around them, including his friend, nodded. There was a sense of fighting competence about them that made him think they shared Turek's second job. Are 2 sessions to learn Federalese really enough? He asked. It took 6 for me to learn Kelsirian, to learn the complexity of our language. Praetiros said. Federalese is easy compared to a naturally evolved tongue. Just don't try to have technical conversation. Turk said, it's simple because it has nothing of that aspect. The shudder was fainter than Jeremy expected, considering how close they were to the airlock and the docking clamps. If you want to talk shop with the technicians from another species, Praetiros said, you are better off learning their language. How does exiting work? You heard the captain. Just scan your bracelets so they can keep track of who's on the station, a man said, another of Turek's friend. The 7 of them had introduced themselves, but considering the length of their name and Jeremy's inability to pronounce them, he hadn't put much effort into remembering them. It also ensures we don't leave anyone behind. Unless they deserve it, another added. How does anyone deserve to be left behind? He asked, worried about accidentally offending someone to the point the ship would leave him behind. To the point they'd do that to him. By breaking Federation law so badly, they can't be handed back to us for prosecution. That's the word I was looking for. Prosecution? Prosecution. You're going. English language and its particularities. Da, da, da. By breaking the Federation law so badly, they can't be handed back to us for prosecution, Turek said. Not something that happens by accident. A sign over a door turned blue, then the hiss of a heavy door. Uh, um, a sign over the airlock turned blue, then the hiss of heavy doors opening sounded. Dozens of doors like this were in the process of opening. Turek had explained. A ship like the Bane, although it was a traveler at this station, connected to at multiple points along the dock to prevent clogging. At Einstein, he'd added, they'd only open one because they weren't allowed to board and because it made for a more secure access. The animosity had implied possible aggressiveness they didn't have to worry about here. The catwalk from the ship to the station had windows through which he saw three other passages with Kelsirians walking through them. The outside's plainness was carried through the inside of the station. It reminded Jeremy of the docks where the ship had the docks of where the ship had docked at Einstein, except here it was crowded with people, cargo was through other accesses. I'm meeting Shangri markets, one of Turek's friends said. Who's with me? Some agreed, others mentioned other places they intended to go. When Turek looked at Jeremy, he shrugged. Without knowing what kind of place that market was, he had no opinion, so they went along. The market turned out to be somewhere on the turned out to be somewhere on the okay that the market turned out to be somewhere on the station. That's kind of obvious. Deeper within the station. Turned out to be deeper within the station. Jeremy had lost the sense of where anything was in the process of the first lift. When it had turned and gravity had shifted, and there had been three more, along with a decent amount of walking. Ryosef practicality, it turned out, had no use for conventions of up and down when they had access to gravity technology. The market was narrower than the promenade, but more crowded with people yelling about what they sold to everyone that walked by in more than federalese. It seems that every square centimeter that wasn't a shop was occupied by someone selling something. It added to the chaos of so many species and so many people. He recognized Kelsirian because they too preferred, although they wore more clothing, so it wasn't as apparent. Their heads made him think of large dogs or possibly bears, and brought to mind Korek's comment about how every species could resemble an animal from his planet, or an insect. The Hidoshi made him shudder and step away. All carapace, body in three segments with 6 legs and 6 arms, and a triangular face he couldn't place as any insect he'd seen before, but that screamed danger to him. Their speech came from a box attached to the body, and other than harnesses to hold the item, they wore no clothing Jeremy could identify as such. The Tahornians he'd seen images of before, and the most striking thing about the three individuals he saw was that nearly everyone kept away from them as much as the crowded space allowed. Don't get close to them, a woman said before pulling him back within the group. Thieves, the lot of them. There were other species, shapes and height, and they all mashed into a sense of alienness like he hadn't thought he could experience. So he focused on the shopping. Trinkets and tools and food he was advised against trying. There was no telling how vendor food would affect him, since Earthers weren't a species it had to be tested against. There were tools and adornments and clothing. With so many species, so many different needs, all kind of clothing could be found, which included shirts and pants and jackets that looked so much like human fashion. Jimmy had to ask, and he was told that it was. Well, it wasn't illegal for someone to print them, and as a species that wasn't part of the Federation, there was an exoticness to human that would appeal to others, as Jeremy had experienced firsthand. He bought himself a few sets with basic prints filed for each. He had no skill in printing with clothing files, but one of the clothiers on the ship should be able to work with them. Purchases were sent directly to the ship, so they continued unencumbered. Jeremy was the first to indicate he needed a break, and they made their way to a station eatery. It reminded Jeremy of those on the ship in that the room was large, much larger even, and busy with people, all kind of species. Even other groups of Kelsirians he could tell weren't from the ship because they had a rougher look to them. A difference was that they had to order their food, then go pick it up when the table informed them it was ready. The options included foods of every species printed and prepared by cooks. He was surprised everyone at this table chose printed food, but they explained they didn't feel like waiting. The cooks would only start preparing their meal when they placed the order, unlike the ship's eatery, where there was always something ready to snag. He ordered Kelsirian food, and the meal was jovial. The stories told confirmed that those with Turks were also hunters, and that they'd seen combat a few times. There was ribbing about his friend receiving special treatment from their beta, but Turk shrugged it off when Jeremy asked. He put aside concerns his friend might be cheating on his mate and focused on the food and company. The discussion had turned into them asking Jeremy about humans and what Earth was like and their culture, and when a ruckus. Oh, wait a minute. The discussion had turned to them asking Jeremy about humans and what Earth was like and their culture when a ruckus erupted further into the room. A table was on its side. Rough-looking Kelsirians were standing, and one, gray-furred and fidgeting, was backing. There was something immediately familiar about the man, his body language. He's in trouble. Jeremy stood before the other protested, then he ignored them. Xenial, what's going on? He called and immediately realized he'd used the man's short name and had spoken in English. The quartermaster looked over his shoulder, was surprised, and grinned, then turned slightly serious and faced the Kelsirian at the lead of the group. Mom, really? He said. Do you have to embarrass me in front of my friend? Jimmy decided there was no way he'd understood the exchange properly, especially when he didn't understand the reply at all. Look, he said in Federalese, I'm sure. Go away, she ordered. This doesn't concern you. I think that you threatening my ship's quartermaster does concern me. Aren't we friends anymore? Genial asked in English, then smirked. Jimmy couldn't tell if it was at his shocked expression or the outrage on the other Kelsirians. In the other Kelsirian. Are you on those things' ship? Well, you left me to die, Mom. I wasn't going to quibble over who got me out of that dung heap. I left you to learn to respect me. You were gone when I returned. Disappointed not to find my corpse? She snorted. Like Xenia Han would ever let you out of his bed. Unlike you, he knows how to treat me. She raised a hand. That's enough, Turek said, standing behind Jeremy. Go sniff somewhere else, she told them and the others. We don't let the Halan harass one of ours, someone else said. Or anyone. Another added. Yours? She demanded, while the Kelsirian, with her, looked eager for what was about to come. Kelsirian's plural. Where's my cursor? There's the cursor. Come back here. Oh, I'm sorry, Mom. I never said the ship who picked me up was an Earther one. We just happened to have an Earther among the crew. I'll have you notice he used a shortened version of my name. You might have missed it on account of his pronunciation being a little off. Really? Jimmy asked. I don't think that's doing the situation any good. It's doing exactly what I wanted to. He repeated in English. He replied in English, which only angered her further. You will rue the day I gave you birth. Hunters! Turk snapped, and Jimmy heard the people stand at attention. We are hunters, they recited at one. We die so others live. Half the opposition took a step back, but they all looked concerned, except for the quartermaster's mother. She was pissed. Consider the situation carefully, Truck said, before engaging with us. See, Mom, I've made the right kind of friends. And that concludes chapter 62 of The Captain's Heart. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is available on Ream's Story. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.